so much for coming. Would you mind just starting to introduce yourselves and a bit about your company?
Right, maybe I start. I'm Tobias Becker with ABB. We're a leader in automation and power technology. We're active here in Africa since 110 years. I'm leading a program in ABB, which is called the Africa Program, which has the objective to anchor us even better in Africa and double our business within the next couple of years.
I'm Camilla Leeds, and I'm the HR business partner for Philips in Africa. And we are a health and technology company, and we are aiming to impact the lives of 3 billion people a year by 2025. So part of our leadership challenge, part of our challenge is really how do we impact people in the health and well-being space.
Hi, I'm Nigel Bastow. I'm a principal consultant with Global Career Company, and I help organisations to find and develop leaders.
Perfect. So, Ben, I'm going to start with you. Why do you think leadership development is so important to both current and future employees?
The world is very fast changing, and we can't use what happened in the past as predictors of what's going to happen in the future. So we really need to develop our leaders to be dynamic, to be able to make changes with the changing environment. And that applies to our current leaders, but our future leaders, I think, are going to look completely different. So we need to equip them now with the skills that will enable them to be completely versatile and have something to offer in the future.
It's really interesting. Would either of you like to weigh in with anything?
For a company like ABB, we're in the technology field and in manufacturing. When we look at Africa, we know that this is the next big area where manufacturing industry will move to. And we don't feel that we as a company, but also Africa as a continent, is already well enough prepared for that development. There will be virtually hundreds of millions of manufacturing jobs moving over mainly from Asia into Africa. So what we need to drive is leadership skills that are able to attract and build the capabilities needed for manufacturing, which is very much different from the extractive businesses, the agro businesses, or even the tertiary secondary businesses that are quite successful in Africa. So we feel we need to be a part of developing Africa's ability to be a manufacturing hub for the world.
All I would add is that there's almost this sort of belief that the more senior people know everything already, and therefore they have no need to be developed or learn, whereas of course the opposite is the case. The more responsibility you carry, the more important it is that you adjust to the changing world, and people can never stop learning.
So Tobias, let's start with you on this one. So what role do you think leadership development plays in employee engagement?
Employees are reading the same narrative that we do as thought leaders or managers. When we talk about lifelong learning, when we talk about the need to be adaptive, that you cannot make an entire career within one profession or one company or even within one industry, they read the same books and they are flexible. But it also gives us a challenge that our future employee base is much more volatile, is much more willing to try out something new and also leave our company. So the retention rates that we are used to as managers or leaders in our industry, these retention rates are a thing of the past. So we need to be able to re-attract talent and give them a perspective why it is the best thing for them to join us rather than another team. And that's different from what we're used to, where we practically took people in from the university age and we brought them up within the company. We had a talent pool which was big at the base, and then of course you can feed a whole pyramid of leadership from that. Nowadays we don't count on that loyalty any longer. We can't. We actually need to reinvent ourselves as an employer brand as well, to attract the future employees and also to attract the future type of leaders that we will need in this much more agile and fast-moving environment that we're in today.
It's really interesting. Anything that you'd like to add to that?
I think the days of one career for life are over, and people will probably have 3 or 4 careers in the course of their lives, and those may be within the same company or they may be outside. So I think where you can provide an environment to feed that learning and feed that opportunity for people to grow and develop in their careers, I think will really benefit the organisation and will provide a great opportunity for talent and retention, where people know they can get an opportunity for development, but will also really feed back that development back into the organisation.
Yeah, and I just think to add that at whatever level, there's a contract, an emotional contract between the employer and the individual. And as I said before, no matter how senior somebody is or whatever stage they are, they need to get something in return from that relationship. And it's fulfilling, and it helps people's confidence and their self-esteem. So if they think their organisation is helping them with their development, then that increases their buy-in and their loyalty, as Tobias said. So it's very important from an employee engagement perspective.
Perfect. So what effect do you think leadership development can have on the employee brand? Should we start with Nigel?
So that builds on nicely to my last comment about employee engagement and the employer brand are interlinked. So for me, an employer brand isn't just the external face of an organisation when you're trying to attract talent. It's just as importantly the relationship with your existing employees, because your employer brand should be a reality. It should be a reflection of your values and your culture. So you shouldn't put out to the external market a brand that's actually not true. So it's very important actually for me, your employer brand starts with your existing employees, and that's the brand you then communicate to attract people of a like mind. So engagement and brand are interlinked, and so if the leadership development supports your engagement and your employees become ambassadors for the organisation, that enhances your brand externally and helps you attract similar talent.
That's really interesting.
There's also, learning doesn't end at the door of the organisation, so quite often that learning journey also impacts on your customers and your suppliers, and particularly in our industry, where we're wanting to touch people from a health perspective. So it's the development that goes on beyond just our own employees. How are we helping the community workers or the nurses or the doctors to better use our equipment, to better diagnose, to better treat people? So it really is a lifelong process, and it goes across the full continuum. It's not just employees. It is much broader than that.
Mm-hmm. I believe that, of course, as a large or small company, you always have to create value for your shareholders. That's very clear. But what has changed is that today the most successful companies are not those that generically pick something they are good at and drive shareholder value, but it's those that pick something that their employee base can identify with, that they really can stand behind. So if a company chooses people who are best at what they are supposed to do, but they also work on something that they best like because they feel it's good for mankind, it's something they can fully identify with, they can stand for, whether it's healthcare, for example, whether it's furthering social capabilities of an economy, or if it's in our case, for example, making the world a better place by decoupling power and resource consumption from economic growth. Whatever it is that they can really believe in, they will put the shoulder behind the wheel, and they make the company more successful. So shareholder value will come much more from having the right people in the right spot, but also having the right portfolio, the right purpose of the company that people can really identify with and really fight very hard for.
Great. Thank you for answering my questions. I'd love it if we could just end with a little bit of advice to what you'd sort of say to someone who's just starting to set up a leadership development program. Any tips or things?
What do you want to achieve by the program, and be very clear about what it is that you want to achieve, and how are you going to measure that? And it's not necessarily the measurements in terms of, yes, we're going to sell X more widgets, or we're going to be more productive, but what are really all of the dimension on which you want to measure it, and look at a diversity of approaches. So blended learning, whether it is face-to-face, small group sessions, teamwork, actual book learning. I think it's all important to put a little bit of all of that in, because that leads to a more rounded education and learning.
I think what goes without saying is you don't want to design a leadership program in a way that reflects the past. It has to reflect the needs for future leadership. That goes without saying. I think it's important that a leadership development program also is a bridge from what in the past worked and what leadership material you have available now in the present time, and what you would like to see in the future. So if you lose that, if you disrupt that completely, you will lose those people who feel they have accumulated leadership experience and have created value for the company. They feel cut off, they feel useless, they feel that their value has been diminished. But if you build it as a bridge, if you say, we're good at certain things. This is what we want to be in the future, and this is how we use what we can as a platform, as a springboard to get there. Then you will not lose those people who have already a lot of experience under the belt.
And just to add to both of those comments, what Camilla was saying, I think you need make it interactive. So get people involved, don't just make it sort of a classroom type thing. And find some role models from the organisation to be part of the leadership programme. And make sure, as Camilla said, when you're measuring it, that you're really clear on it being very relevant to your organisation. Don't do a programme that is sort of off the shelf, that doesn't feel completely connected to your own, the DNA of the organisation for whom you're designing it. Make sure that you're well connected to your existing employees, and you have your future leader role models.
That is great advice. Thank you all so much for